All right. GM, I'm Titus. I'm VP to go-to-market at Civic, where we empower developers with privacy-preserving tools for user and identity management. Welcome to our podcast. We dive here into how digital identity is transforming industries at the intersection of Web 2 and Web 3. Before we begin, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow us on your favorite platform. Definitely the support makes a difference. I'm excited to have on this episode a little different guest profile. We're joined by Pavol Hrina, a product strategy consultant focused on digital identity. He and our CTO, Daniel, connected at the DICE conference in Zurich, which is an unconference focused on identity earlier this March. And then we also saw one of Pavel's recent articles, Driving EUDI Wallet Adoption, Key Lessons from Proven Digital Identity Models. So we're super happy to have him on our podcast, and we're going to explore what it really takes to drive meaningful adoption for digital identity wallets, the good, the bad, the ugly of identity origination. So Pavel, thanks for joining us. Please tell the audience more about yourself, about how you got involved into this EUDI wallet initiative.
Thank you, Titus, and thanks to the whole team for inviting me. And I'm glad to be here because I'm personally an addict of podcasts, so I'm happy to contribute at least with a bit of a knowledge. So yeah, I come originally from Slovakia, right now traveling the world, and I was always in between business and business and IT, so all the time between those two spheres. Started at Accenture, business analyst, product owner, different projects, different systems that we were integrating and implementing. But then at some point in 2021, I came across digital and decentralized identity. And back then, the blockchain was getting very popular in the masses. So blockchain was popular even before, but it came to the masses. So I quickly got really attached to it, or really really wanted to get to know more about decentralized identity. And yeah, then suddenly I joined in Accenture a team which is called the Global Decentralized Identity and Biometrics team, which was basically shaping and focusing on how a decentralized identity is, how Accenture's view is shaped, and how as well the clients of Accenture's client did this. And we were focusing on MDLs, verifiable credentials, and as well the EU digital identity wallet. Back then, I still remember we were analyzing one of the first architecture and technical framework that they released. And now you have it was version 1, and now it's version 8 something, or 1.8 or 1.0.8, something like that. It is currently, so it evolved. And yeah, so but there basically I came across, I was basically a researcher. We did a lot of pilots, we did a lot of research, a lot of thought leaderships, a lot of client pitches, and tried to basically get credentials, verifiable credentials in the hands of our clients. But then after leaving Accenture, I came to Certain. Certain is a background screening company headquartered in Canada, but they are basically in the whole world. And their focus is tenancy screening and employment screening, but they really wanted to create a new product, which what we called back then verifiable credential network, the VCN. And they literally the goal was to try to reuse the outcomes of background screening to credentials, to verifiable credentials, and make them reusable, right? So what we have done, we've piloted it, we've tried to simplify the tenancy screening process, right? So for landlords to make sure they have the best candidates, the most appropriate, in a really easy way and private way. So we built a wallet app. We also integrated identity, income, and credit verifications and management of verifiable credentials. And as well, we've built an API framework, which basically was the backbone of how everything was functioning. And so yeah, we piloted it, but then I left Certain, and currently I'm on my sabbatical, and I'm trying to see where my next move will lead me to. But since 2021, I'm day in, day out decentralized digital identity.
So I think we've been toying with the idea of decentralized identity for a while in the crypto space, and like I think it's natural to us like to think of wallets because it's a pretty common topic in the blockchain space. But can you tell us, like from your perspective, like what is the idea behind a digital wallet for identity, and how does that look like in a non-crypto space?
Yeah. Uh, so like basically it comes out from digital identity, right? So digital identity is how people, organizations, things right now as well, AI agents are like proven how they prove who they are in our online environment, right? How you access services, how you sign agreements. Basically to build trust in the online environment, you need some kind of digital identity. Web3, it can be a one that is provided by the state. It can be some private vendor, right? It depends on the country, on the concept, on the use case. And so yeah, so there, like this is digital identity, how I understand it and how I like think about it. And then we have those digital wallets, right? Which are like, I don't know how many years, but the last years basically it started, or everyone knows Apple wallets, right? Google wallets, right? We know how simple and seamless it is paying with a Apple wallet, right? Or a Google wallet. It's just like everybody, if they start using it, they don't go back to the payment cards. And that's something what I think should come to identity wallets and credentials as well. So like I would love a world where you can literally with a double click authenticate, say that it is yourself doing the permission and share with someone, or give basically like say that I'm over 21, or let's say or my income is above 10,000 K when I go to apply for accommodation, right? Or I have a reservation for that room, right? Without anything, like without giving any more context, because we trust the network. So that's what I think about digital wallets, right? They are like a container. It can be an app, but it can be also like a service that is just like a web service. And it's a container that contains valuable information, which are cryptographically signed, which are somehow useful for the other side, but as well which you as an individual own. And this should simplify our lives, which I think I emphasize a lot on that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that our lives would be significantly simpler, and our wallets significantly easier to carry without all the kind of different shapes of IDs that we have to carry around for different purposes.
Exactly.
This reminds me of a project we did back in the day at Civic. It was like 2018, 2019. We did a beer vending machine pilot that would verify your age when you were trying to pay for the beer. So you would like have the payment and the ID verification in the same transaction. It was really fun kind of conference demo, but I think the practicality of it, I think, was a little ahead of its time, given the legal framework here in the US, at least, required to be able to sell age-restricted products, because they're very specific in how that age needs to be verified. And an app on a vending machine is not part of that specification. Let's put it that way.
Okay. But that's a really great use case, as you said. Like even like for so I also have an overview about like US MDLs, mobile driver's licenses, and how the adoption is there. And like I'm also interested in that and was working a bit with that. So I know like age verification is a strong use case for US, for most of the states, because you just use it everywhere, right? Like it's just like so common to use it. So yeah. But unfortunately, it comes with the legal requirements.
Yeah, and even like even every age verification interaction is regulated in very much detail, that you have to do it according to how the law currently states it, or like how the business rules stated in that particular region. I think the US is the only country where I pull my ID out like, I don't know, twice a day if I go out or something like that.
Yeah. I don't remember when I was proving my age, to be honest. I like I'm not that old, but I also look older. But if you don't look very young, you don't that much. Like you don't have to prove age that much in the EU. But
yeah, that's true. And I say it depends.
But on the other hand,
on each state, right? As well.
Yeah. Because on the other hand, right, like like vapes, like electronic cigarettes. Those like it's like everyone loves it when they try it, right? And like you have such an not unregulated market, but it's like, you know, it's very easy on the internet to buy vapes, which is something like very like many countries, like at least in the EU, are trying to like, okay, guys, we need to have some form of age verification there. You can't just like sell vapes to everyone, right? So yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's from the government side. I think what's important to kind of note is what is kind of a mindset shift that needs to happen with the end user, with the citizen, with the buyer of these products. Like they need to understand the like value of verification. Like, can you tell us more about what you're thinking? Is that in that future?
Yeah. Like very easy one, like with how we just click on like I accept all the terms and conditions without knowing like zero what is happening there, right? Because you don't have any option, right? You either accept or you just don't get the service, which is something that happens in the EU and the US, I think worldwide, right? They have to be. There are some regulations on that. So, but I think that that's something a mind shift that we should be also like raising the awareness that with verifiable credentials, you are able to choose what you are sharing. Only like you have the ability to choose, right? On the other hand, like I know like there could be like many comments right now, like, but what if the relying party, the service provider, just wants everything, and they either like, you either share everything or you share or you don't get the service. Yeah, that can happen, but it's about like also it comes back to the trust framework, right? So something like one I would say that one. The other thing that I wanted to say is that currently we don't see like data as something like valuable. We just like, you know, like, oh yeah, do you need my income, right? Like income statement. Yeah, okay, I need the service, so I will share it to you, right? Like login with Facebook. Yes, okay, like you have to, should I agree with terms and conditions? Okay, I will. It's just like we are currently just, we are very like dependent on all the platforms, and they are basically setting the rules, right? So this is something as well, like we have to try to shift, like at least in the EU right now with the EU digital identity wallet, we should be trying to shift the mindset of those. Um, as well, like we are trying to keep it more independent of the platforms. Right now, sign with Google, very convenient, right? Like why wouldn't you use it? But that's also something that we want to make, that EU Digital Identity Wallet and the initiative wants to make sure that we're trying to make people aware that we are trying to keep it out of the platforms, right? Making it like very platform agnostic, which is a term that they don't have to care about, but we know, and we have to build it in some way and to basically tell it in some way that they understand that we are not trying to come again to the same way as we are in today's world. And yeah, and as well, like to empower them to say like, hey guys, like, I mean, like, why wouldn't you try the EU digital identity wallet when with the new wallet, with the new mobile app, let's say, you can get a job faster, you can apply for a job faster because you can share diploma credential, right? Which is like, you know, verifiable, like instantly. You can share your your past history, and or you can just go to a hotel and you can share everything that they need in front. But you as well, like they are empowered that they see, okay, this actually brings me value. It's mine, and it is actually better than the previous one.
So instead of essentially sharing your LinkedIn, you would be presenting your EUDI wallet credentials, like as your kind of history of employment.
Exactly. Like I came from like last year, I was the product manager in a background screening company. So I know how much how much work it requires, like those fulfillment persons to get like diploma verified, right? You have to call the university, or yeah, I know like in the US, you have a service called National Students Clearinghouse, which basically aggregates all the diplomas, or they provide a service to verify, but not every country has it, right? And it's sometimes still like, okay, it's either an Excel somewhere where an assistant at the university has to look into, or, you know, yeah. But basically, yeah. I seen the struggles, and I also went through it, and I think that there are way better ways to solve.
Yeah, and for employment verification, you end up having to call each company to check. It's like, hey, who's the person who can verify this
Exactly.
employment? Like
Yeah.
HR has to essentially respond to these calls. If somebody's applying for a mortgage or getting like screened for a rental, like all these are unnecessarily complicated processes. I think from that perspective, it makes sense why
Yeah.
the EUDI is being built. I think the flavor of how it's being built is where the interesting discussion happens, because I've seen different conversations happen in different countries within the EU about how this EUDI wallet should look like and who will build it. And some countries just choose to build their own from the government side, whereas others were like, well, let's let the private sector build it, but within these very strict rules. Others are like less clear.
Yeah.
So what's your view on that? What's the best way?
Yeah. 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 I don't know what's the best way, but I definitely know what is not me, not I think what is not the best way to do it, not maybe the right way to do it. It's just like, so currently the status for all the audience that they understand. So next year, December 2027, 27th of December or something like that. Let's keep it as a December 2027 next, 2026 next year. Every member state has to release an EU digital identity wallet, which is basically an app for, I hope, like for all the different app stores or like OS operation systems. And that's their goal right now, right? And like, I don't want to say something bad about the government or something like that, but we know, like, maybe you have the same experience, or like people could maybe agree or disagree. I don't want to speak about all the countries, but let's say like most of the countries, they don't build great apps, right? And in this way, if you want to like have the adoption, and if you want to like convince the people that are like the daily users, and like also like some people like us, like that are more into digital identity, you have to build, I think, also great apps, right? Because people like literally, if I go to my phone, on my phone, I have like numerous of apps, right? Some are like daily usage, and some are just like, okay, I went to wash a car, and I had to pay with an app, so I downloaded another app. But that was like either this, or I have to go and take out money, right? So I just downloaded the app. So people are already like, people have so many apps. So what I wanted to say is that they have to build great apps. And I think what will happen in some countries, not all, some countries will just release something to fulfill the requirement, right? Like the basically the regulation that came from the EU. But I would, so my view, and like I spoke to people, like for example at DICE, at the conference back in Switzerland, in Zurich, a couple of weeks ago, or already a month ago, and they agreed that like, yeah, it might be better that like they cooperate with a private sector, like. But then on the other hand, some people had a great like arguments, like why they think maybe even like government wallets are a good thing to do. Because like some people are more like trust more the government, so they can basically pick the government, the wallet. Yeah. Then you have people that want like better usability or whatever, they pick that app. Or then we will have some other people which will just pick an existing app that will have the, will implement EU digital identity wallet features and will be certified, right? So as we go forward, like there will be private sector apps that can be certified by the member state, right? So member state will have a organization that will certify other private sector wallets. But then there are like something called like PID, like the yeah, it's like like your ID basically, right? Like PID, it's a personal identified PID. Yeah, now I forgot. Sorry about that. But it's basically your name, your first name, your last name, your date of birth. So your like foundational identity.
The full identity credential.
Yeah. So this one will be probably only for those like, like government wallet, and we will see like, we will see how this unfolds. So it's very like still like as we speak, it's being like very, very like those nitty gritties are being created, and like who will certify it, how it will certify it, will all the member state have the same way of certification? So like not everything is set. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think what I want to see when these apps get released is one, easy onboarding for the end user. So like they can easily get on without too many steps, easy checks whenever the request happens, and then also a straightforward, easy to use API so we can actually read it easily. Because if we have to go and register with some government body to be able to get API access in person at like a counter somewhere, then that becomes, it's almost kind of pointless at that point.
Exactly. Yeah. Like that's a very good point with the last one. Even like the adoption for the relying parties and the service provider, like this is like key, right? Like it has to be simple, and they have to be like companies that do that. And that's at least like what we were doing back at Certain, where we created that API framework. This was something that we were trying to make sure, like very easy, like couple of API calls, but still like trying to keep like it very say like privacy preserving and all those technical terms. So yeah, you're totally
Yeah, so
right.
let's go a bit into the future. So everybody puts out these wallets at the deadline or around the deadline. Since there's no really an adoption target, how should we look at a successful adoption from your point of view? What would that look like?
So there is one target, which is like a futuristic target. Is like the EU will have, so every citizen in the EU or resident in the EU will have access to digital ID by 2030. So that's the final goal. But it means like, so how I understand it is like they will have access to it, but they don't have to use it. So it's like every member state will have it like fully rolled out basically until 2030. This is what I will use from one podcast episode that I also listened to, because you like, I think the what target will be hit will be smaller than we would hope for, but also depending on the country, right? But let's say if it would be great. Like I think like around 40% might be like the tipping point, like adults, right? We are speaking about adults in a member state, right? Because the adults will mostly use those wallets. So I would say like something around 40% could be a great target. But like to be optimistic, like to be like realistic, like nobody will give like a hand into the fire. How you call it? Like that this will happen in 2027.
Very European thing. Like put the hand into the fire. Very literal thing.
Exactly.
I love it. So okay, what do you think are the biggest hurdles for this adoption? Like it was gonna be probably like around maybe under 40%. What do you think is the biggest concern / hurdle there?
So I would say like we have like existing providers, like digital identity schemes that are very good established, right? Let's say like a really good one, like I really like the example or the like two examples. There are multiple in the EU, in the European Union, but let's take like Sweden. They have the bank ID, which is like used by 99.7% of adults. Like it's like a wow, right? Like wow. But like when I'm still not sure like how they will, like who will switch to the EU digital identity wallet, because that bank ID, you have to understand that it's not only banking related, but it's like proving age at the counter, like at the automatic counter, manual counter, at the grocery store, or like e-commerce, right? So it's very like just called bank ID because it was created by a consortium, like by like multiple banks and so on and so forth. And it's like a very trusted framework in the, now I want to say, not Nordics. Yeah, Nordics. Okay. So yeah, so they will have like a like hurdles, like, okay, what should we do, the EU digital identity wallet, in order to, to make sure somebody uses it. So I think like existing one, but private also like publics, right? So like public. So you have Estonia, which is another like very good example. And they have like everything is just decentralized. Everything is like eGov is like like for sure one of the best in the world, right? So they should just turn whatever they have into like, like, okay, they have an existing app, let's turn it into a EU digital identity wallet to enable cross-border use cases, right? There is not that much maybe they can do in their whole own country. I think there is still, but like they might now focus on the cross-border one, right? Like, so for example, like how can I make sure that I can authenticate and like myself in Slovakia, for example, as an Estonian. So yeah, I would say like this would be the first one. Then yeah, you have standardization and interoperability, right? You have the EU, you have the member state, but then you have a regulation, and then you have a technical framework, and then you have a toolbox, and then you have open source code. But then, for example, you have accreditation, like how every country will do that, and that's something that is not right now like standardized. From what I understood, is like up to the country to do it as first, and then we standardize it, right? So it's like it's a like a challenge to do. Then you have also the different maturity in member states, right? As I told you, Estonia, and then you have, for example, Slovakia has for sure a way lower rate of adoption and like eGov services. As well, some countries have like bad experience from the past. So a good example is in Germany, right? They had not a very successful rollout of the electronic ID. So, for example, like if you already if you try to convince people and you fail, you will have a tougher time to do that, right? So that's another one. And as well, like everybody would agree that that's like a very big complexity of what EU wants to build, right? It's like there are so many stars, I say, like stars in the sky that have to align to actually like a big success. But I think like with steps, it's possible, and they are doing like EU digital identity wallet are doing like very good steps to make it a great future of digital identity.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that makes it a little bit complicated because you have to coordinate all these 27 member states, their private and public sector at the same time. But like for me, I mean, this is one of the reasons I got into identity in the first place, is because I moved countries 3 times. And every time I had to start from scratch in terms of like proving my identity. And it was a huge pain not to be able to carry my history with me from like a member state to another member state, which I mean, in hindsight, should have been pretty obvious. But then I mean, also cross continental as well is a challenge, right? Because you're operating with the same companies ultimately, like I mean, serviced by the same banks, just with the different brands in the different countries. But they won't share the data between them, or they won't recognize the same methods of authentication or identity verification that I used when I established my history initially with them. So that's one thing that's extremely annoying. The other one is like, I think, well, I hope, my hope as like a kind of ecosystem member is that they will build a simple SDK to slot into these use cases. It's not just Sweden or Estonia. There's also like Belgium has it. It's me. It's like a kind of a consortium as well. That's also like 90+% adoption. I think France do some things as well from a digital ID perspective. So there are initiatives here and there kind of pushing that direction. I think for the sake of like ease of integration and connectivity is like just let's slot in as much as we can into existing services, and then provide that infrastructure for the interoperability, because I think that's the part that's missing.
Yeah. No, you nailed it, right? Like with existing, right? Like why would you build something new and try to convince people to use that new when you have already like millions? Like the adoption is already in millions. You just like plug in another like functionality or feature or like a side thing. Yeah. So that I totally agree.
So besides the kind of ease of integration and then possibly even like legal requirement, what other incentives do you think would work for early adoption, especially in these places, but not only in these places that already have systems in place, but in general, like what works, what doesn't?
Yeah. What works, what doesn't? I would say, if I understood the question, it's like so yeah. Yeah. I would say they should focus on the established, as I think I mentioned already. It's more like maybe right now to focus on the cross-border ones, if they have an established one as well, right? So that's something like I also like, changed countries, and there is no way of like how to prove your like, your income, your credibility, your even like identity, right? Like we have a like ID card, or you have a passport, so that's already a good one, yeah, a decent one. But so I think like focusing on the cross border ones, and as well like there's still like a lot of like, okay, so I want to speak about all of them, but like we are currently proving identity, right? Like it's like who you are, like I'm Pavel, but like there is so much more of like like proving like what I own, right? Like as I said, like diploma, that's a very good use case if you want to travel abroad, right? Like, okay, as we spoke about, like so it's a background screening, right? Like there's so much to do in background screening, right? Like it's like turning it and reusability of background checks. So yeah, so going beyond identity authentication, it's a good one. Yeah, I would maybe keep it on those two, and there's for sure more. But
So again, now I want to turn the page to a bit of a different angle.
Mhm.
It's like, what are some of the biggest privacy risks for these EU IDs and government issued digital identity in general?
Okay. I think, yeah, if you ask some people, they will say like data centralization, right? Like, okay, government wants to control and see what I do, where I share my identity, where I share my diploma, income, where I travel, what payments I do, right? Because the EU digital identity wallet at some spot in the future should also enable payments. So with the digital euro, it should all everything should come together. So like many people are like basically like afraid about those, like to get even further into centralization as we are today. This comes together with like tracking, right? Like people are literally like many people are afraid of like tracking purposes, like, okay, but they literally want to track me. That's why they are trying to make me want to use another app which was provided by them, and which is identity. Like the word, I think, like digital identity is like a very, like people are afraid about those two words. So it's something that it has to change, and there has to be like, we have to not sell but tell the people the good incentives, right? And but as well, like the like tracking and centralization, this is something backbone like under the hood that has to be, like has to be not supported. I want to say that it shouldn't be trackable and shouldn't be centralized. And as well, like identity, like theft, about like identity fraud, it's something also that we like people are afraid, or like it could be one of the privacy risks. But on the other hand, right, like we are already using like banking apps, right? You have all the banking information there, and you are not afraid to use it, right? You are not going to make every transaction at the bank because it's just convenient, but you still, if somebody steals your phone and unblocks it and literally like tries to somehow like do another check, he can transfer money. And that's the same with like identity wallet, right? Like it's just how you have to be aware of how you use it. But I would say, like, if people are already using things like payments, if they're using banking apps, I don't think it will be that much of a hurdle to get people to use identity wallet apps. If they are useful, and if they solve some problems that was not solved before with different means.
Well, I mean, I think the problem that they need to solve usually is like proving your identity quickly instead of bringing stacks of paper is the biggest problem in many states. And then the other thing, like from my perspective, I think there's an opportunity to add some sort of like humanity / biometrics checks or face comparison at least, or some sort of verification, so that people can't actually steal your identity anymore as easily, because now we're relying a lot on oh, what are the things that you know about yourself or you have about yourself versus like how do those things compare to actually the things that you can't alter about your person, like your face or your fingerprints or other like sensitive PII like that. Now, the other thing that I think not a lot of people understand or know in detail is how much of identity is actually digitized in a fragmented way across governments, like especially for cross-border crossing and stuff like that. Because you try to like cross the border if you're like a dual citizen for some like in or multiple citizenships. If you enter with one passport and try to exit with another, for example, you will be flagged. They will be able to track how long you've spent in a country or another at border checks because they registered your entry and your exit. There are all these like registers of that. Like when I in the US, I think I was able to get that information from the government by applying for a Freedom of Information Act request, and they sent me a list of like, hey, these are the number of times you entered and exited the country at these dates and times at these points. So they have already like a lot of this information. It's just about like handing power, I think, back almost to the citizen in terms of seeing what's out there, like seeing what identity elements are being used. So I'm hoping we're going to see some of that transparency because I think that's another privacy risk. It's like, so it's not showing the end user anything and just kind of having all this data in the back end be flowing to these various places, which we might not know about.
Well, so for example, what I really like, and I hope like all those apps will implement, is like to see a history of like where I shared the data with whom, when, and why, like incentive. But as well, on the other hand, like we have GDPR, and you are able to revoke that access, right? So there are like different laws. So like that's what I wanted to point out also here on the live stream is like regulation, right? Like that's even, so we have technical hurdles, but we have also regulation, which is like something that drives this change, because like you can have great systems, you can have great products, but if the legislation, if it's not right, then you can't just use it for different means. So what I want to say is like also like revoke the access, you know, like, okay, I share with a employer my diploma, like verifiable credential, but then, okay, after a while, I didn't, you know, I was not selected, so I revoked the access or something, and they have to delete the data, right? So it should be like, it should go hand in hand with that, because right now, like we have, there is some data on the internet, but there are like, we have hundreds, maybe not thousands, but like hundreds of accounts created. And do you know where? I don't know all the parts that create, right? Like we use like password managers to make like track it, and there are apps that will help you to delete the data and, you know, to find all the ways, the data streams, but it's still, you know, it's fragmented. So I hope this will also be somehow like solved, and like for some people will be interesting to see like, oh, where I actually share my data, right?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a data nerd, so like I have thousands of accounts that I know where I created when and with what username. But I'm probably the exception from that perspective. But,
Okay, yeah, I would
yeah, I
say
mean,
you
some of
are.
those things like we're talking about these instances or these use cases as well from like any kind of digital identity perspective. Like how can you make that request expirable, revocable, or giving it a time to live, almost like an auth token? It's like, yeah, you shouldn't be able to access my diploma, for example, or my passport information or whatever I'm using to verify my identity forever if I interacted with you for one thing once. Like, for example, I go to a bar in the US, like I don't want that bar to have access to my full identity, one, or if I give it access to my identity, I only want it to have access like while I pass through the door. Once I am in, I can like make sure, not even like click revoke, but like make it self-destruct. Like that token expires, so therefore when they try to check it again, I need to approve it again. Which I get it, it's an inconvenience. There's like some consent fatigue that comes with it. I think it's one of those things that we need to learn also from the cookie initiative that was rolled out in the EU, especially. People just click accept all and move on. And that's one of the things that we need to be mindful of as we're building the community, as we're kind of leading the way in the identity space. It's like, how do we work with people so that they don't kind of automatically opt into stuff because like otherwise they're hard to read or hard to understand.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. Like short-lived, like set the time, but then that gets complicated, right? But like that's where we are, and that's what we need to solve right now. Like complicated things we need to be solved right now, because we had those sign in with and whatever was here before, but right now we have to move from.
Yeah, I think very few people know the details of like the IDAS 1.0 rollout, and now like IDAS 2.0 is coming or has arrived. I don't even know. Like there's various countries that have various things that work in various degrees of completion. Let's put it that way. When you look at their APIs or their login methods.
Yeah, ADAS 1. So how I see both is like ADAS 1 was basically like optional. Like they had to, like implement something, but like in the ADAS 2 is more about like, okay, cross-border. They, every member state have to like deliver an app, an EU digital identity wallet. They also have to have all those certification bodies and all the other actors. So it's more like, okay, which was also nice, right? I really like the idea of like, okay, they tried it. Like, let's say they have the ADAS 1 or the first regulation. They learned from that, right? There is like a full document of the learnings, like what were the learning points, and then they now evaluate it and put it into what we call like, it's more ADAS 2. It's more like a working name for that. Like we can call it like EU Digital Identity Wallet Initiative, and so they really learned from that. Something that I also wanted to point out here are like large scale pilots. So hand in hand, like since 2 years, so already, like there were 3, now they are 5, or they're merging somehow, but they were initially 3 large scale pilots, if I'm not, or maybe 5. I've done a post about it, but I already forgot it was 2 years ago. So they were a couple of large scale pilots that were like they had like almost 100 of organization, private, public sector came together, and they wanted to pilot a use case. The use case were different, right? Like from like applying for a university or payment or traveling, going to check into a hotel. And they literally are, so they are, law was being created, the toolbox was being created, the code, and as well the architectural framework, and everything was also like piloted. And then, you have a triangle, like they were informing the other to maybe like do some adjustments, right, in the regulation, or do some like adjustments in the reference framework. So that's something that I would like to highlight, that like this is also already still going on, but was already as well, like, and then comes with a lot of learning and a lot of, you learn earlier than learning by like releasing and then. So that's a good way.
Yep, 100%. I think that's very important that they're doing this time around, so that people get used to how the tech works and see where the gaps are and what else needs adoption.
And for some, just one thing to add, like for some who is like somebody interested, there is like EWC, large scale pilot. If you search for, they have now like a public testing, so you can basically like download one of the wallet apps, like supported one, and then go through different scenarios, right? You have like a mobile app, you have basically the relying party, or like the front end, the web app, where you can basically interact with, and you can see like how they are thinking about the use cases. So yeah, and you can also provide feedback, so feel free to do that.
Yeah, so this is the website, right? AWC.
Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. Cool. Awesome. So I think we're getting close to the end. So I want to kind of end on a positive note from that perspective. Like, what excites you the most about this EUDI wallet initiative?
Yeah. I would love to have like cross-border use cases. I think that's a game changer. So I don't think the game changer is like use cases in each member state. For some, maybe member state, yes, but like what will thrive, how the EU will thrive is with cross-border use cases, right? When I can go to live in another country and don't have to build, as you Titus said, like don't have to build a new like history about myself. I also I got like very like attached to like background screening, and it's like a bit of a like an old fashioned like industry or a sector. So I hope also this will somehow change, right? Like this comes together with like moving and like cross border as well, and yes, this too, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be super exciting to be able to get a SIM card, get a bank account, get a place rented without hassle. Like when you're going within the like 27 member state you like limits. I think in the way in the US is a sort of like an example from that perspective. Your driver's license from Colorado works in California in the same way it works in Texas, the same way it works in New York. Like it'll be recognized by everyone, and they will be able to check it in a kind of unified way. So if we can achieve that in cross border, that would be kind of amazing for mobility. So yeah, on that note, thank you, Pavel, for joining us, and everyone for tuning in. We had a few comments come in, so I'm glad people are excited about the topic. And we need to be asking these questions, and we need to be having these conversations about the privacy aspect, about how usability will function before these things roll out, so that hopefully regulators and like people in the industry building, they come together and they find the best solution. So thanks for this awesome chat. Kind of last words. What is something you want viewers to check out? Where can people follow you?
So I'm heavily on LinkedIn. I do short blogs and like long format blogs. I'm also preparing a new one, which I still need to do some work on, but like in analyzing all the mobile digital identity wallets, apps, whatever we have on the market, and see like user experience and like what are the like the best case practices, or what are the features to not forget about, right? So for any builders, that might be interesting. So yeah, check out my LinkedIn. I don't like I'm regularly like, but I'm trying to put like some value, right? So every post should come with some value, not just like random, you know. So yeah, LinkedIn, and that will be it. LinkedIn.
Let me put that link up here. Hope you want to check it out.
Yes.
It's essentially LinkedIn with your name. You can find Pavel pretty easily. I found him this morning. I found him when I read his article. So once again, thanks a lot for this conversation. I love it when I get to dive into one of these like more technical topics or legislative topics that people are like not very aware about in the rest of the world, but very kind of aware about it in the EU. Thanks everyone who tuned in. If you enjoyed this episode, as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow us. It really helps us grow. Choose your favorite platform. We're on a bunch of podcasting platforms and broadcasting platforms. So, and then don't forget to check out civic.com and learn about what we do. Over and out. Thank you.